The massive human warship SS Thunder drifted silently through the dark void of space, its gunmetal gray hull reflecting distant starlight. Captain James stood on the bridge, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he studied the holographic display before him. The ship's latest patrol had taken them far from human space, following the trail of pirates who had been raiding outer colonies. "Captain, we're picking up multiple signals ahead," reported Lieutenant Parker from her station. Her fingers flew across the control panel as she analyzed the readings. "They're unlike anything in our database." James nodded slowly, his expression remaining calm despite the potential threat. The Thunder was a Titan-class warship, carrying enough firepower to level a small continent. They had little to fear from pirates, but unknown contacts were another matter entirely. "Take us to combat readiness, but keep weapons cold," he ordered. "Let's not start a war by accident." The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency as the mighty warship prepared for possible combat. Shield generators hummed to life, and weapon systems entered standby mode. Through the main viewport, James could see the distinctive ripple of the shield grid activating, a nearly invisible barrier that could withstand tremendous punishment. As the Thunder moved closer, they began to make out details of the unknown vessels. There were 12 of them, arranged in a formation that spoke of military training. Their designs were wildly different from one another, suggesting they came from various species or civilizations. "Sir, they're hailing us," Parker announced. "The transmission patterns are strange. Our computers are having trouble decoding them." Before James could respond, the main screen lit up with an image that made several bridge crew members gasp. The alien commander appeared to be a tall, graceful being with iridescent skin and multiple sets of eyes. Behind it stood representatives of what seemed to be other species, each more exotic than the last. "Unknown vessel," the alien spoke, its words being translated by the ship's eye with a slight delay. "You have entered Stellar Alliance space. Please identify yourself and state your purpose." James stepped forward, maintaining his composure despite the historic nature of this first contact. "This is Captain James of the human spaceship Thunder. We are pursuing pirates who have attacked our colonies. We mean no harm to peaceful vessels." The alien commander's multiple eyes blinked in an unsettling pattern. "Human, we have no records of your species. Your vessel's weapon signatures are concerning. Please power down your systems and prepare for inspection." The bridge crew tensed at these words. No human warship had submitted to alien inspection since the early days of space exploration, and they weren't about to start now. "I apologize, but that won't be possible," James replied firmly. "We are a sovereign military vessel on a legitimate mission. We will not power down or submit to inspection. However, we are willing to share information about the pirates we're pursuing." The alien's skin shifted colors, displaying patterns that the human crew couldn't interpret. More ships began appearing on the Thunder sensors, moving to surround them in a standard containment pattern. "Your cooperation is not optional," the alien commander stated. "Your vessel's weapon systems exceed acceptable parameters for this sector. Submit to inspection or face consequences." James felt a familiar calmness settle over him, the same feeling he'd experienced in countless combat situations. "Lieutenant Parker, broadcast our standard identification beacon. Let them see exactly what kind of ship they're trying to intimidate." As the Thunder's beacon activated, the alien vessel's sensors would be receiving data about the human warship's capabilities. Its Titan-class designation, its planet-cracking weapon systems, its nearly impenetrable shields, and its status as one of humanity's premier military vessels. The alien commander's skin paled to an almost translucent shade as the data streamed in. The surrounding ships halted their approach, maintaining their distance from the human vessel. "Perhaps," the alien commander said slowly, "we can discuss this situation more diplomatically." James allowed himself a small smile. First contact situations were always delicate, but sometimes a show of strength was the best path to peaceful resolution. The Thunder had faced down space pirates, rogue AI fleets, and hostile aliens before. These alliance ships might outnumber them, but quantity had never been a match for human military quality. Diplomatic discussion would be welcome, James replied. Shall we begin by sharing what we know about these pirates? The tension on the Thunder's bridge could be cut with a knife. While Captain James maintained diplomatic communications with the Alliance commander, more alien ships continued to arrive. Lieutenant Parker's display now showed 20 vessels of various sizes forming a sphere around the human warship. Their weapons are charged, Captain, Parker reported quietly, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. They're trying to mask it, but I'm detecting power buildups in what appear to be weapon systems. James kept his face neutral as he addressed the Alliance commander on the screen. I notice your reinforcements are taking aggressive positions. That seems unnecessary for a diplomatic discussion. Merely standard procedure, the Alliance commander replied, its skin rippling with dark patterns. Your vessel's weapon systems are causing considerable concern among Alliance leadership. We must insist on a full inspection before any further dialogue. The human crew watched as warning indicators began flashing across their stations. The alien ships were activating targeting systems, their weapons locked onto various sections of the Thunder. Engineering reports shield strength at maximum, Parker announced. Point defense systems are tracking multiple weapon locks. Should I activate countermeasures? James raised his hand slightly, signaling her to wait. Commander, he addressed the alien leader, I want to avoid any unfortunate incidents, but you should know that any attempt to forcibly board this vessel will be met with appropriate response. The Alliance commander's expression shifted to what might have been contempt. Your single vessel, however heavily armed, cannot hope to resist the combined might of an Alliance fleet. Power down your shields now, or we will be forced to disable your ship. James sighed. Sometimes, the only way to prevent a fight was to show exactly why starting one would be a bad idea. Lieutenant Parker, prepare a demonstration. Target the smallest uninhabited asteroid in range. Low yield, if you please. Asteroid targeted, sir. Range, 600,000 kilometers. Alliance Commander, James spoke clearly and calmly. I'm about to demonstrate why threatening this ship is unwise. Please observe. Before the alien could respond, a brief flash of light erupted from one of the Thunder's smaller weapon ports. A fraction of a second later, the targeted asteroid, roughly the size of a small moon, shattered into millions of pieces. The blast was so precise that the debris barely scattered, instead forming a neat cloud where the asteroid had been. The Alliance ships reacted immediately, their formations tightening as energy readings spiked across their hulls. But James noticed their weapons were no longer targeting the Thunder directly. That, James said quietly, was from one of our point defense turrets, a weapon we use against small targets like missiles and fighter craft. Would you like to see what our main guns can do? The Alliance commander's skin had gone completely white. Through the video feed, James could see other alien representatives in the background speaking urgently to each other. Your weapons technology, the commander spoke slowly, appears to be more advanced than our initial scan suggested. Not more advanced, James corrected. Just different. Humans have a long history of warfare, Commander. When we moved into space, we brought those lessons with us. The Thunder isn't just a warship. It's the product of thousands of years of military evolution. As if to emphasize his point, one of the Alliance ships drifted slightly closer to the debris field from the destroyed asteroid. Their scans would be showing them the truth. The asteroid hadn't just been destroyed, it had been completely atomized at the molecular level. Perhaps, the Alliance commander said, its voice carrying a new tone of respect, we should reconsider our approach to this situation. You mentioned pirates. James nodded, allowing himself to relax slightly. Yes, they've attacked 3 of our colony outposts in the past month. We tracked them to this sector before encountering your fleet. These pirates, the commander's skin shifted to a deep blue, where they happen to use phase-shifted shield technology, and carry weapons that leave radiation burns. Exactly those, James confirmed, his interest piqued. I take it you're familiar with them. All too familiar, the commander replied grimly. They're rogue warriors from one of our member species. We've been trying to capture them for several cycles, but their ships are too fast for our fleet. A slow smile spread across James's face. Well then, Commander, it seems we might be able to help each other. The Thunder may not be the fastest ship, but I guarantee those pirates have never seen anything like our weapons. The main conference room of the Thunder hummed with nervous energy as Captain James waited for the Alliance delegation to arrive. After the tense standoff, both sides had agreed to face-to-face talks. The human crew had spent hours preparing the room to accommodate various alien physiologies. Transport incoming, sir. Lieutenant Parker's voice came through the intercom. Alliance shuttle is on final approach to our docking bay. James straightened his uniform and glanced at the human security team positioned discreetly around the room. This would be the first time any human had met the Alliance species in person, and he intended to make it count. The doors slid open to reveal the Alliance commander, now accompanied by Admiral Reed of the Alliance fleet. In person, the aliens were even more impressive. The commander's iridescent skin shifted colors with each movement, while the Admiral's crystalline exoskeleton caught and reflected the room's lighting in dazzling patterns. "Welcome aboard the Thunder," James said, stepping forward to greet them. "I trust the docking procedure went smoothly." "Your ship's systems are remarkably efficient," Admiral Reed responded, his translator converting the crystalline chimes of his natural speech into English. "Though I must admit, the gravity on your vessel is stronger than we're used to." "We can adjust it if you'd like," James offered, gesturing to the conference table. "We've prepared environmental controls for your comfort." As they sat down, James noticed how the Alliance leaders studied everything around them with intense interest. Their eyes lingered on the subtle signs of the Thunder's military nature, the reinforced walls, the weapon lockers disguised as wall panels, the multiple redundant systems. "Let's address the elephant in the room," Admiral Reed said, using an idiom that surprised James with its accuracy. "Your ship's capabilities exceed anything we've encountered in our centuries of space exploration. This makes many in the Alliance nervous." James nodded, appreciating the direct approach. "I understand your concern, but right now we share a common enemy. These pirates, or rogue warriors as you call them, have killed innocent civilians in our colonies. We want to stop them, nothing more." The Alliance commander's skin rippled with dark blues and greens. "They are called the Exiled. Once they were proud warriors of my species, but they refused to accept peace when the Alliance was formed. They've been raiding and pillaging ever since." "Tell me about their tactics," James said, leaning forward. "Lieutenant Parker's analysis suggests they use hit-and-run attacks, striking quickly and disappearing before a response can be mounted." "Correct," Admiral Reed confirmed. "Their ships use advanced phase shift technology. They can briefly slit between normal space and void space, making them nearly impossible to track. Our weapons can't lock onto them fast enough." A smile crossed James's face. "That's because you're trying to track them through normal space. Parker, show them the analysis." The room's holographic display came to life, showing a complex pattern of energy signatures. "We've been analyzing their raid on Palmer's colony," James explained. "Their phase shift technology leaves a trace in subspace, like ripples in a pond, you might say. We can't track them directly, but we can predict where they'll appear." The Alliance leaders stared at the display with all their eyes. "This is remarkable," the commander said. "None of our scientists thought to look for subspace traces." "Humans have a saying," James replied. "Sometimes you need fresh eyes on a problem. We've spent centuries fighting wars, learning to think around corners. Now we can put that knowledge to better use." Admiral Reed's crystalline form sparkled with what James was beginning to recognize as excitement. "If we combine your tracking capability with our knowledge of their patterns and hideouts, we can catch them in a trap," James finished. The Thunder's weapons may be powerful, but they're useless if we can't hit the target. With your intelligence and our technology, we can end this threat to both our peoples. There is another factor to consider, the commander added, its skin shifting to serious tones. The exiled will be overconfident when they see Alliance ships. They don't believe anything can match their technology. They won't be expecting a human warship. Good, James said firmly. Let them be overconfident. Element of surprise is a warrior's best friend. Now let's plan this properly. Parker, bring up the sector maps. Admiral, Commander, tell us everything you know about their usual routes. As they began to plan, James couldn't help but feel satisfied. What had started as a potential conflict was turning into something much more valuable, the beginning of a true alliance between humanity and these ancient spacefaring races. And soon, they would show these pirates why attacking human colonies had been a terrible mistake. The Thunder moved silently through space alongside 3 Alliance vessels, their combined sensor networks scanning for any trace of the exiled pirates. Captain James stood at his usual spot on the bridge, watching as Lieutenant Parker worked her magic with the sensor data. Another ripple in the subspace field, Parker reported, her fingers dancing across the controls. They're following the pattern we predicted, heading towards the Crimson Nebula. James nodded, glancing at Commander Mills, their Alliance liaison, who stood nearby watching the human crew work. The alien's metallic scales reflected the soft light of the bridge displays as he studied their methods with obvious fascination. Your crew's ability to track subspace distortions is remarkable, Mills commented. Our ships would have missed these traces entirely. Sometimes the best way to catch a thief is to follow their footprints, James replied, even if those footprints are in dimensions we can't see directly. He turned to Parker. Time until they reach the nebula. At their current speed, 3 hours, sir. But there's something else. Parker highlighted a section of the sensor display. The energy signature is larger than before. I think they've joined up with more ships. Commander Mills moved closer to the display, his scales rippling with concern. The exiled often gather in larger groups before major raids. They could be planning something big. James allowed himself a small smile. Good. The more of them we catch, the fewer innocent people they can hurt. He pressed a button on his command chair. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. The Thunder's crew moved with practiced efficiency as the massive warship prepared for combat. Shield generators hummed to full power, weapon systems warmed up, and the hull plates shifted slightly as armor sections realigned for maximum protection. Sir, Parker called out, I have an idea about the nebula. The exiled's phase shift technology won't work well in there. Too much interference. They must be planning to use it as cover for their next jump. James considered this. So they're counting on the nebula's radiation to hide them while they prepare for their next raid. Mills, how would your ships usually handle this? We would form a perimeter around the nebula, Mills explained. Try to catch them when they emerge. But they always seem to slip through somewhere. Because that's exactly what they expect you to do, James said. So let's do something they won't expect. Parker, what's the density of that nebula? Could the Thunder handle it? Parker ran quick calculations. Yes, sir, but our shields would be at reduced efficiency. The radiation would interfere with our targeting systems too. Perfect. James turned to Mills. Commander, have your ships set up that perimeter like you usually would. Make it obvious. Let the exiled think they're facing the same old Alliance tactics. Mills's scales shifted to a pattern that James had learned meant confusion. But you said that wouldn't work. It won't, if that's all we do. But while your ships keep them focused on the perimeter, we're going to do something crazy. Something so crazy that no Alliance ship would ever attempt it. James turned to his helm officer. Take us into the nebula. The bridge crew exchanged excited glances as they realized their captain's plan. The Thunder's engines powered up, pushing the massive warship toward the swirling clouds of the Crimson Nebula. Sir, Mills said hesitantly, No ship has ever successfully engaged in combat inside a nebula that dense. The risks are exactly why the exiled won't expect it, James finished. They think that nebula makes them safe. They think they know all the tricks in the book. Time to show them that humanity wrote some chapters they've never read. The Thunder plunged into the nebula, its advanced sensors cutting through the interference better than any Alliance ship could manage. The crimson gases swirled around them, reducing visibility to almost nothing. But James knew that same cover would hide them from the pirates until it was too late. All hands, James announced ship-wide. Prepare for close-quarters combat in zero visibility. Just like those exercises we ran in the Saturn rings. Remember your training. Trust your instruments, and stay alert. We're about to show these pirates why you don't raid human colonies. Through the swirling red clouds, Parker's sensors picked up the first hints of their prey. The exiled ships were gathering, just as predicted, completely unaware that humanity's deadliest warship was sliding through the nebula towards them, ready to strike. Deep within the crimson clouds of the nebula, the Thunder drifted like a shark stalking its prey. The bridge was bathed in red emergency lighting, and the crew worked in near silence as they tracked the gathering exiled fleet through the interference. 15 ships detected, Parker whispered, though there was no need for quiet in space. They're forming a circle. Looks like they're preparing for a mass phase shift jump. Captain James nodded, watching the tactical display where bright dots showed the pirates' positions. Outside the nebula, the Alliance ships maintained their obvious perimeter, keeping the exiled's attention focused outward. Suddenly, warning lights flashed across every console. Captain, Parker's voice rose with alarm. Energy spikes from all around us. It's an ambush. They knew we were coming. The nebula lit up as energy weapons fired from multiple directions. The exiled ships had been waiting for them, hidden in the crimson clouds. The Thunder rocked as the first hits struck their shields. All hands, battle stations, James commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. They may have surprised us, but they don't know what they're dealing with. Parker, Battle Plan Delta. Show them why you don't corner a human warship. The Thunder's response was immediate and overwhelming. The massive ship's weapon ports opened, and streams of plasma fire cut through the nebula in all directions. The exiled ships scattered, clearly surprised by the speed and accuracy of the human vessel's response. Sir, Alliance ships report they're under heavy fire too, Parker reported as their ship shuddered from another hit. The exiled fleet is larger than we thought. At least 30 ships total. Commander Mills, still on their bridge, watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as the battle unfolded. No ship has ever survived being surrounded in a nebula like this. The radiation alone should be crippling your systems. James allowed himself a grim smile. The Thunder was built to fight in Saturn's rings, Commander. This nebula, it's just another day at the office. Parker, activate the point defense grid. Show them what human engineering can do. The Thunder's hull bristled as hundreds of smaller weapon ports opened. A web of defensive fire erupted around the ship, creating a sphere of destruction that vaporized incoming missiles and forced enemy ships to keep their distance. They're trying to box us in, Parker announced, her hands flying over the controls. Standard encirclement pattern. Wait. She paused, looking closer at her readings. Sir, I don't think they can see us clearly through the nebula. They're firing at our last known positions. Perfect. James leaned forward in his command chair. Engineering. Divert power to the main guns. Parker, plot me a course right through their formation. Let's show these pirates what happens when they try to trap a human ship. The Thunder's engines roared to life, pushing the massive warship forward through the crimson clouds. Its point defense grid created a moving wall of fire that cleared a path through the nebula, while its main guns fired with devastating accuracy at the exiled ships that were still shooting at their previous location. 3 enemy ships destroyed, Parker called out. 4 more heavily damaged. They're starting to break formation. The bridge crew watched as confusion spread through the exiled fleet. Their carefully planned ambush was falling apart as the thunder moved in ways their tactical computers said were impossible, firing through the nebula's interference as if it wasn't even there. "Sir," Mills said, his scales shifting with excitement, "the Alliance ships are engaging the outer perimeter of the exiled fleet. The pirates are caught between us." James nodded in satisfaction. "Send word to your ships, Commander. Tell them to hold their positions. The Thunder will handle the rest." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their command ship. Full power to the main guns. Let's end this." The Thunder's massive main batteries powered up, the energy buildup making the air itself seem to crackle. Through the swirling crimson clouds, they could see the outline of the exiled command ship, still trying to coordinate their failing ambush. Fire. The Thunder's main guns erupted, sending beams of energy so powerful they turned the nebula gases to plasma in their wake. The exiled command ship shields held for barely a second before failing completely. The ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the sheer power of human weapons technology. In the silence that followed, the remaining exiled ships began to retreat in panic. Their supposedly perfect ambush turned into a devastating defeat by a single human warship. Sparks flew from damaged consoles on the Thunder's bridge as damage control teams rushed to make repairs. The Crimson Nebula still swirled outside their viewports, but now it was filled with the drifting wreckage of exiled ships. Captain James stood at his command station, watching as Lieutenant Parker tracked the retreating pirate vessels. 8 ships escaped the nebula, Parker reported, her voice hoarse from shouting orders during the battle. "They're trying to regroup near the system's outer edge. 5 more are disabled but intact. Alliance ships are moving to capture them." Commander Mills stared at the tactical display in amazement. His metallic scales had taken on a bright, almost golden sheen, a sign of extreme excitement in his species. "In all our years fighting the exiled, we've never dealt them such a decisive blow. Your ship's performance was impossible." "Not impossible," James corrected, watching as his crew efficiently managed repairs. "Just unexpected. The exiled thought this nebula would protect them. Instead, it became their trap." He turned to Parker. "What's the Thunder's status?" "Shields at 60% and recovering. Minor damage to decks 3 through 5, but nothing critical. Main guns need 30 minutes to cool down after that last barrage." She paused, checking another reading. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy patterns from the escaping ships. They're preparing for something big." James nodded grimly. "They're desperate now. A cornered enemy is the most dangerous kind. Show me their formation." The main screen displayed the remaining exiled ships. They had arranged themselves in a tight cluster, their energy signatures pulsing in an odd pattern. Commander Mills's scales darkened as he recognized it. "By the stars," Mills whispered. "They're preparing for a mass phase shift jump. If all 8 ships jump together, the energy release could tear a hole in space-time." James finished. "And anything nearby would be pulled in, including that populated mining outpost in the next system." He straightened his uniform. "Not on my watch. Parker, remember that theory you had about their phase shift technology?" Parker's eyes lit up. "Yes, sir. Their ships create a subspace field before jumping. If we could disrupt that field at the right moment, they'd be trapped in normal space," James said. "Mills, get me a channel to your ships. I have a plan, but we'll need perfect timing." As James explained his strategy, the crew watched the exiled ship's energy readings climb higher. The pirates were putting everything they had into this final desperate gambit. They might die, but they'd take countless innocent lives with them. "Alliance ships in position," Parker announced. "Thunder systems ready." "Sir, we'll only have one shot at this." James took a deep breath. "All hands, battle stations. What we do here will be remembered by both humans and the Alliance for generations to come. Let's make it count." The Thunder's engines flared to life, pushing the massive warship through space at speeds that made the Alliance crews gasp in awe. They weren't just flying. They were charging straight at the exiled ships. "They're starting their jump sequence," Parker called out, phase shift fields powering up. "Steady," James commanded. "Wait for it." The exiled ships began to glow with energy as their desperate gambit reached its peak. Space itself seemed to bend around them as they prepared to rip a hole in reality. "Now, execute attack pattern Omega." The Thunder fired every weapon it had, not at the exiled ships, but in a precise pattern around them. At the same instant, the Alliance ships launched specialized energy pods provided by the human vessel. The combined effect created a web of energy that intersected with the pirates' phase shift field. Space twisted, buckled, and then snapped back to normal. The exiled ships hung there, their phase shift technology completely disrupted, their weapons powerless. "Direct hits on all targets," Parker reported, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "Their systems are completely shut down. They're not going anywhere." Commander Mills's scales had turned an almost blinding gold. "Incredible. You didn't just stop them. You found a way to disable their phase shift technology completely. Our scientists said that was impossible." "Nothing's impossible," James said, watching as Alliance ships moved in to secure the trapped pirates. "You just need to think around corners. And sometimes, the best way to stop an explosion isn't to run from it. It's to control how it happens." As the adrenaline of battle faded, the crew of the Thunder allowed themselves to relax slightly. They had faced impossible odds, turned an ambush into victory, and stopped a desperate suicide attack that could have killed thousands, all in a day's work for a human warship. A week after the battle in the Crimson Nebula, the Thunder's conference room was packed with both human and Alliance representatives. The captured exiled ships floated outside the viewports, their once proud hulls now under Alliance control. Captain James sat at the head of the table, watching as Admiral Reed finished reading the battle report. "Remarkable." The Admiral's crystalline form sparkled with excitement. "Not only did you destroy their main fleet, but you also captured their leadership and developed a way to neutralize their phase shift technology. In one battle, you accomplished what we couldn't do in 50 years. The Thunder's crew deserves most of the credit," James replied modestly. "Especially Lieutenant Parker. Her insights into their technology made this victory possible." Parker, seated nearby, straightened with pride as all eyes turned to her. The Alliance scientists had been particularly impressed by her analysis of the phase shift technology. They had already started working on ways to adapt the Thunder's countermeasures for their own ships. "The Alliance Council has reached a decision," Admiral Reed announced, his translator making his chiming voice clear to all. "We would like to formally invite humanity to join the Stellar Alliance. Your military expertise and technological innovation would be invaluable." Commander Mills, his scales now permanently tinted with golden respect, added, "The exiled were just the beginning. There are other threats in the galaxy that could benefit from human tactical thinking." James looked around the room at his crew, seeing the pride in their eyes. The Thunder had come looking for pirates and instead found humanity's place among the stars. But there was one more thing to address. "Before we accept," James said carefully, "I want to be clear about something. Humans aren't just warriors. Yes, we have a long history of warfare, and yes, we've become very good at it. But we fight to protect, to defend, to make things better. If we join the Alliance, it won't be just as your military arm." Admiral Reed's crystalline form shifted in what James had learned was their equivalent of a nod. "We understand. Your ship's actions prove that. You could have simply destroyed the exiled, but instead you found a way to capture them. You protected that mining outpost even at great risk to yourselves. These are the actions of protectors, not mere warriors." "In that case," James smiled, "I believe humanity would be honored to join. Though I should warn you, if you think the Thunder is impressive, wait until you meet our scientists and engineers. They're the ones who really think outside the box. Parker's console beeped, interrupting the moment. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. They've reviewed our reports, and they're sending more ships. 3 Titan-class warships and 2 diplomatic vessels. They'll be here within the week. The Alliance representatives stirred with excitement. If one human warship could change the balance of power so dramatically, what would a fleet of them mean? There's an old human saying, James told the assembled aliens. United we stand, divided we fall. The Stellar Alliance has stood for peace and cooperation for centuries. Now humanity can help protect that peace while learning from your wisdom and experience. Admiral Reed rose, his crystalline form catching the light. Then let this day be remembered as the beginning of a new era. The day humanity joined the stars not as conquerors, but as guardians. As the meeting concluded and celebrations began, James stood at the viewport watching Alliance ships patrol alongside the Thunder. The captured exiled vessels would be studied, their technology understood and countered. The nebula that had hidden pirates for so long would soon host a joint human-alliance defense station. Lieutenant Parker joined him at the window. Hard to believe, sir. A month ago, we were just chasing pirates. Now we're changing the course of galactic history. That's what humans do best, James replied. We adapt. We innovate. We find ways to turn challenges into opportunities. He turned to look at his crew, who had performed so brilliantly under pressure. And we never, ever stop improving. Outside, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if welcoming humanity to its new role among them. The Thunder had arrived in Alliance space as an unknown vessel, feared for its weapons. It would depart as a symbol of hope, protection, and the beginning of humanity's greatest adventure.